Right.
And then once that person is set,
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Hello. This is a great crowd. Hello. Yes, exactly. I don't actually know what time it is. We arrived in London yesterday afternoon, so it's all sort of a little bit of a blur at the moment. So I'm powering through on okay, because I've got a great room of people here today, and so that always energizes me. So I'm really thrilled to be here. I've also got some great members of the broader Lightning, both product and engineering team here with me. If they can stand up and wave so everyone can see, and we'll bring them up a little later. We've got Jeff Davis there in the back, PM for lists. JF in the far back there is our architect for Lightning security. Stefan Murray here leads engineering for the experience side of Lightning. And Mike Orr, that many of you may know, also leads all of our Lightning adoption efforts. And I'm Eric Jacobson. I'm on the product side, and I lead the customization side of Lightning. So in Lightning, I know this is the developer user group, but let's not be afraid of clicks. There's amazing things we can do with clicks, and we can combine them together with code and do even more. So the way I think about it is that it's really about finding the tools that allow you to be as productive as possible. And why write code if you don't have to has always been the way I've looked at it. I began my life as an engineer, and if I can avoid writing some code, that's just one less place that I have to go back and fix bugs in later. So I think we can all appreciate that. Okay, now, as I promised, we will need to actually begin with a forward-looking statement slide, because it has once upon a time, and I think very truthfully, been explained to me that as a product manager, effectively every word that comes out of my mouth is a forward-looking statement. So with that, I ask that you make any purchasing decisions based on what is generally available, and with that we can get into talking about the roadmap and features of Lightning. Okay, I don't have a ton of slides. Well, I have a ton of slides, but I don't actually want to use a ton of slides. I want to make this time be for you. So I have a few things that I'd like to show you tonight, and then I want to make sure that we have time to try and address any questions about anything really related to Lightning, Lightning experience, and Lightning components that the room may have, and that's why I've brought that along with me. Now, one of the things that I do want to show you, because I think it's kind of interesting and important, is that one of the things that people have been talking with us about from the very beginning with Lightning was that perhaps there was some feedback that Lightning had too much white space. And we've heard that time and again, and we've gone through a number of efforts, in fact, internally. Our first one was something that we called Lightning tightening, if you will. And then we went through another effort, and we're currently calling an effort that we've got underway, something that we're calling the Densify project. Really looking at saying, how do we address the perception that there is not enough information on the screen? So this is what Lightning looks like today for a sample record here. And this is about the size of, basically it was a screenshot taken from a typical laptop. So what you might see when you're looking at an opportunity record. What if, alternatively, it could look like that? Well, there's some smearing in the room. Interesting. Okay. What if users had the ability to decide which of the options they like? So let's look at a few of the things that are happening here, and also what the net effect of it is. So the net effect is that if this is the cutoff line, this is about basically where your laptop would cut off, you're getting about 30% more information on a given screen. Because we've done a number of things here. We've tightened up a lot of the padding. There's less white space around everything. But also the big thing to notice is that the field labels have moved back to the left side. What do you guys think? Is this intriguing? Would this actually help or hurt user adoption for you?
You've made Lightning more like Classic.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Classic.
You've made Lightning more like Classic. In a good way or in a bad way?
I think it's
Why we moved away from Classic.
I mean, now, mind you, when we first started out Lightning, we had the navigation down the side, and that was just bad. So making that more like Classic was a good thing. Of course, we made it better than Classic.
I like the fact that the details have room to breathe, and you can see things in their own space.
Okay.
Without pulling. Yeah. But I think your killer feature that you
kind of alluded to there was the fact that users can choose. That's what makes the difference. It's a preference, not a mandate.
So what degree of control do you think there should be? Should this be something that is where the admin of the org sets the default for all their users, and then
The users should.
Yes, there should be an org default, but then users can click, and it needs to be self-evident. It needs to be like compact view, expanded view.
Like switching between classic and the Lightning experience.
Yeah.
You know, really obvious, really straightforward.
So you mean once you switch, we're not going to let you switch back from cozy to compact?
But maybe if someone has a brand new account that they're logging into for the very first time, maybe a screen that takes them through just a wizard to say, hey, how do you want this to look? By the way, these settings, you can change them in your profile later.
Yeah.
Okay, some thoughts about perhaps an onboarding wizard, if you will, or something that asks you how much you want to set it up. I think that's a great idea. I think that's definitely something we're thinking about. Can I see a show of hands? How many think that if this one on the left here is cozy and this one over here is compact, how many think that cozy should be the new Salesforce default? Remember, that's the loose one. And how many think that compact should be the default? That was kind of an even mix there, Stefan.
55, 45.
Yeah, I couldn't. There was not an overwhelmingly clear answer there. So clearly having the ability to have an org default, so that the admin can say what they think is going to be best for their users, and then still allow the individuals to make their own personal choices. Ideal. Okay, so this is something that is actively under development. Are we still thinking winter? I think we're still thinking winter for this one. So around the Dreamforce time frame, you should be seeing that. Okay, now the next couple of things that I want to share with you are decidedly not winter. Yes?
Assuming that this is the user preference settings, yeah? How this would be then matched to the custom components? Would this be available?
So the question was, how would this be reflected in custom components? This will work by modifying the behaviors of SLDS. So if your components are built using the base components, it should automatically take care of it for you.
Yeah. Okay, so assuming that if you're using the SLDS classes, that should be.
Yeah, and in particular, if you've built them using the Lightning base components, then everything will just automatically happen for you. So basically, what you're seeing here is that some of the token values change based on cozy and compact. And it's not just one value. You know, it's a number of different values throughout the system here that are being carefully tweaked to ensure that both of them are well composed and consistent systems. Because under the hood, there's a lot of tokens, right? And what we don't want is for people to be going in and modifying individual tokens like that. That's just error prone. So
Stuff like this page structure, the flow, and etc. should be like used in the need to modify the components itself.
You should not be needing to modify your components if they've been built using the base components. You should not need to make any changes to your components to be taking advantage of this. JF, please feel free to keep me honest on this, but everything I'm saying is the truth. Okay. Rare.
Since there's more on the screen, it's render time for the slower again. There's more components on the screen, there's more.
Why don't I pass these to some of the other members of my team?
So that is actually a hot topic internally. We're starting to look at it. I can tell you that, generally speaking, we're not expecting to see too much of a performance. The reason is that if you look at the components that we have on the screen, generally speaking, moving from something like top labels to left labels, granted, yeah, there's a few more pixels that we're drawing on the screen, but the paint time for a browser is really not going to be an issue. The only case in which it might, incur a little bit of extra overhead would be for the related list container, where you render out the number of cards as a function of the size of the viewport. But that's something that we're looking closely at, and we're aiming to minimize and hopefully target zero performance impact as a result.
How does that surface on mobile?
We're going to talk, the question was, how does that surface on mobile? Which is a great segue to one of the things that we will be talking about very shortly. Was there another question before that? Yes?
How will this affect automated live tests?
Yeah.
It's like
We're just having a conversation on this one. So for the most part, these are just CSS changes. So if you look at typing things up here, for the most part, this is just changes to adding, margin, etc. The one difference, right, would be for left aligned, labels versus top. There, the DOM structure is going to change. So it depends to some extent on how you've written your selectors for your automation, whether those break or not. Certainly something that you want to take a look at as soon as this goes out to the sandbox. But that being said, given that you have the ability to essentially toggle at the user level between essentially what is the default today versus dense, you can always just run your automation in the current mode and it will be done that.
Still, you need to build both if you want users to be able to do both during testing.
If you want to be exhaustive in your testing?
If you want to be exhaustive in your testing, you might do that. I can tell you that even internally, I don't think that's something that we're doing. I mean, it's automation, performance-wise, we definitely have.
Yeah, I don't think we
have workloads for both, but functional automation is just going to run probably against the current mode.
Yeah, I don't think we're planning on doubling the number of tests we run. Yes?
Could an application have some sort of switch to force one setting or another?
Could an application have a switch? It's certainly something I think that we're thinking about longer term. In general, providing more capabilities for the functionality to differ from app to app is definitely the trend you should see us going. A number of things that we've done with Lightning apps so far, things that I wasn't specifically going to bring up tonight, but one of the other things on the roadmap for apps is also being able to have unique themes per app. It's something that we want to do. That one's probably a couple releases out on the roadmap at this point.
Down to spring.
It's definitely not winter, so it's probably spring. That forward-looking statement very much applying.
Is this going to apply to console apps as well?
Yes.
Choices.
Yes. And that's where that kind of comes into question. There is that in a lot of cases, especially for a lot of our existing Service Cloud customers, that was one of the key drivers here, was that the ability to cram as much information onto those screens as possible was perceived as being the driving product requirement there. And so you could certainly imagine that in that case, perhaps that you'd want to be able to say that your Service Console application defaults this way, but that your sales application doesn't, or something along those lines. So it's absolutely, I think, directionally where we want to go with it. Okay. Now I get to show some fun things. So we've had some teams back in the office working on some pretty tricky stuff for a while now, and I've had an opportunity to share it with a couple of user groups in some fairly small settings. So consider yourselves to be a relatively privileged group at this point, in that very few other people on the entire planet have had an opportunity to see what I'm about to share with you guys. So these are two projects that we are working on internally. So the first thing to note is that this is not something that you should expect to see in GA by Dreamforce. That is not happening. There are things that we are actively working on. If things go well, we may be having some pilots of the features that I'm about to share with you around the Dreamforce timeframe. But you can certainly expect that these things becoming generally available is going to take a little bit while longer, and you'll see why in just a minute. So let's see here. Where's what I'm looking for? So we could be here, and we could be looking at a custom object page, and we'll see a custom object that we've all seen before, and we could be looking at the default there, and we've got basically our details panel. Now, one of the things that we've heard for a while now is that detail panel that pulls from my page layout is fairly monolithic. And boy, that page layout editor really doesn't feel like it's part of Lightning, because perhaps it's not. It's very clearly part of Classic. And also, I'm wondering, in this room here, how big are your biggest page layouts that you guys ever interact with? Anyone have 200 fields? 300? 4? It's okay. 500? The hands went down. I've gone higher. Okay, so but we've got some page layouts with 400 fields on them. That being a single block, it's pretty painful. So, what if instead we could do things and start to make things a little bit more flexible, a little bit more modular? So here we are, we're inside App Builder, but this is a special version of App Builder. Because what I want to draw your attention to is that over on the left-hand side, where I've got my component palette, I have a second tab there. I have a second tab there that says Fields on it. Because what this is what you're seeing is the very beginnings of something that we're still toying with the name. Right now I'm playing with the name, calling them Lightning layouts, but really thinking of the evolution of what page layouts mean in a Lightning world. So let's get rid of that record detail from this page here, and let's go expose that Fields palette, where now what it's giving me is it's giving me the list of sections that I have available to me. It's also giving me a list of fields that I have available. So I could start to go here and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and bring out that general info section there, and I'll place that onto the page as if it was a component. But before, you know what? I actually want to put those into some tabs. So I'm going to go ahead here and say I want to create a custom tab here, and we'll call that one Interior. And we'll create this other one here, and we'll just name it Exterior. And now, we can take some of those field sections, like that exterior section, and just drag and drop, place it into the Exterior tab, have our Interior field section over here in the Interior tab. So all of a sudden, our page layout has become a lot more flexible, because sections are components. And I can then say, you know what? Well, when I'm looking at the exterior of my car, well, I see here I've got the wheel size, I've got spoiler, I've got sunroof, but I'm missing a really important aspect. When you guys think about the attributes of the exterior of a car, what's one of the most obvious things you think about? Color. And somehow we don't have color on this form. But that's okay, because I can just filter down my fields here. There we go. And there's body color. So we'll just drag and drop that field and place it into the section. Maybe we also want the accent color, because maybe it has some, a stripe. Just use App Builder. We can drag and drop our fields, much in the way that we drag and drop components, but they can only be placed into these sections of those fields. And then maybe we could go here and we'll do one more thing. We'll bring on this powertrain section here, and now I've also gone and I've placed that into an entirely different region of my page here. So all of a sudden now my layout's no longer just 2 columns wide, because I've actually made use of the fact that my page here has multiple columns in it. So I've got 2 columns over here on the left-hand side, but I actually have another section here that even has 2 columns on the right-hand side. But more than that is maybe I don't always want to see that powertrain section. So I can tap into the power of dynamic Lightning pages and say that perhaps that unless the fast charger is enabled for this car, I don't want to see the powertrain section at all. And just like that, we've actually now made the display of a section of fields dynamic, conditional based on the data of the record that we're looking at.
Will we see this in my lifetime?
What do you guys think? Will you see this in your lifetime? Well, I really...
Just say it.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Too far away from you.
We may have run out of battery here. I do hope that you plan to be with us for a little while longer. So I do sincerely hope that. But yes, we will see this in our lifetime. We will not see this GAing at Dreamforce. What I'm saying is that if things go according to plan, we will have a pilot of this around the Dreamforce timeframe. And then it's going to roll out incrementally. Because, as you can imagine, there's quite a few page layouts out there. And so if we start with a mantra of first do no harm, we need to ensure that what we're doing here is going to be done in a way that can be able to very peacefully coexist with the massive existing metadata investment. And so we're working through all of that. We're working through how you will actually adopt the feature. Our feeling on it is something that you will be able to adopt on a per Lightning page basis. So not even on a per object basis, but on a fairly granular basis. Because key to that, there we go. One of the things key to that is a change in the way that the assignment model works. So today, if you think about have, especially in Lightning, your Lightning page, the set of all the components that we're looking at here that you edit in App Builder, can be assigned based on an org default, an app default, or then record type and profile within an app, right? And then separately, over here, you have your page layouts, which are just assigned by record type and profile. And those two systems, basically, you have to keep track of in your head to think about what is actually rendered at runtime. I'm sorry. That was more complexity than we really wanted to foist upon everybody. It was a necessary step in the road in order to be able to introduce an app context, to be able to allow for content to differ by app, which we thought was a really important construct going forward, to really allow us to embrace the idea of building discrete apps, to build different apps for different purposes, even if they're sharing the same data. So what we intend to do as part of this is to be able to say that a Lightning page will then point at the moment, a form or a Lightning layout, and that will take care of the assignment directly there for you. So you will very discreetly know exactly which set of field sections and fields is being displayed for any Lightning page, because that will be controlled by the Lightning pages assignment model. What do you guys think? Does that sound a little easier to manage?
So is record type still relevant?
Is record type still relevant? For a number of things, record type is certainly relevant, but it does not have to be. So for a lot of the things that perhaps you may have been using record types as a way just to change what fields were being known, you would not need to rely on that. So for example, I've seen customers where they changed the record type as an opportunity moved from one stage to the next because they wanted to display a different set of fields. In my mind, that was not the intent behind record types. Record types are really meant for differentiating, for basically disambiguating multi-dimensional objects. So but if really what you're trying to do is encapsulate a small variation, then dynamic logic is going to be a much simpler, a much more, I think, a much easier way to maintain that going forward. We posit that it should actually help reduce the overall number of layouts that need to be managed. Yes?
Try again. Will you be able to fold in something like conditional rendering that we have at the moment?
Will we be able to fold in conditional rendering?
Suppress it based on that?
Well, so right now you saw here, you saw what I just did there was for a section of fields. The natural evolution would be for us to do it on a per field basis. Yeah. So in the first cut, it's going to be on the section basis, but we have been building it to ultimately allow it to be done on the field basis. Because in particular, once we do that, that'll also start to then enable you to be able to have that capability when you're creating a record. Yeah. So not just on view, but on new and on edit, that as I start filling out the form, you can ask different questions. Yeah. So you can say, well, it's like, essentially, if you say, do you live in the US or do you live in the UK? Once you've picked that option, that may then control a different set of fields that need to be filled out because of different country requirements. Yes.
First of all, my jaw's on the floor. Right. Very well done.
Thank you.
But I'm wondering how this multi-column layout will work with lightning events like record edit, actually a records field in a pop-up.
Yeah. Okay. So the question was, how will this kind of multi-column view here function in other types of views where it's all displayed essentially in a single set? And so even though the key to it is that even though I am rearranging the sections here, there will still be a natural order of the sections that you will have control over, so that you can control how the sections are ordered and appear in the cases where they appear all combined together. Because, for example, the new record case is just like that as well when it's in a modal. So that's a great question. Yes, and then yes.
I assume what you've done there is ultimately write Lightning components for us using Lightning Data Service. So is that true? But if they are those Lightning components or those section forms available to us to build in our own components so I can reuse them?
So a little bit about how it's built. I mean, certainly it's all built using Lightning components. Of course, all of the data plumbing goes through the Lightning Data Service. At this point, this experience component is not at least initially going to be exposed as a global component that's available to developers. Longer term, I think it's certainly a possibility, but there's other options there as well using the new Lightning record form component. You will ultimately, when we bring the power of this metadata to that component, you'd be able to target some of those sections as well. So exactly how we productize the developer exposure of it, I think is still something that we're working on, finalizing the details on, but it's definitely a good question.
Will you still be able to control read-only and required?
Funny you should ask, because we've been having a lot of debates about both of those, in fact. Let's start with required, because I'm having some real sort of philosophical struggles with layout level requiredness at the moment. And maybe you guys can help me, because let me kind of tell you why I'm struggling with it. And so let me just switch to a different layout here, because it'll help make the point. If I go to an opportunity here, maybe I have an opportunity in this org. Let's go to a different org. If I go to an opportunity here, and we start to look at this page, there's a lot of different ways that I can now edit data on a record page in Lightning. The layout level requiredness was designed back when the page layout was essentially the only way that that field was rendered on that record page. But now we have things like the path component. We have potentially, in some cases, we also have the related record component. Well, ultimately, at some point, we will make the highlights panel editable. So all of a sudden, there are numerous components on the page that can allow you to edit any arbitrary field. So does the concept of requiredness for the detail section really still make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why?
It's your edit mode as opposed to in a quick action where you'll have different required fields, or in the path, you have different required fields to when you're on a detail screen. So it depends on the micro moment or the action that person's taking. So if the page layout's where we do I'm in edit or I'm in new, then we want to control required there. You may not do it on the page layout, but that's where we want to control it.
You also have the flexibility of data loads and API integrations and stuff like that, where you don't want it to be required for that, but you do want it to be required for an end user. We have a lot of use cases.
That I get, certainly about basically what the client is, but I struggle a little bit about sort of how you're editing a record, especially as that continues to evolve over time, and there can be potentially numerous ways of allowing that edit. That shouldn't the requiredness of a field really be more something that would be save the record? So I think that might help address I'm sorry? Can we, for requiredness, possibly. Could it be the type of thing where if fundamentally that the validation rule is essentially saying if null or if blank fail, then yeah, maybe that's something where we should be able to in advance. I think that's a entirely reasonable request.
I think maybe for that to be truly successful, I think validation rules would have to be a lot smarter in building, because it's super easy for an admin to go tick, you're required, and then all of a sudden they have to think about the conditions in which a field is suddenly no longer valid.
Okay.
And we'd want to override things like quick action still, make a field required that wasn't before. We'd still want to override, because that micro moment may depend. And it's not based on the status of another field or an easy business logic rule, it's where someone wants to perform a certain action, like send a refund or whatever it is.
Interesting. Okay.
I can think, like full-headed vote and you write or something, it's fair. Like you have some required fields there, like highlighted some. But if you're doing inline, it's like maybe it's okay. But or quick actions where you are full-headed mode as well, then yes, required. But probably not all of the place here. How do you control that?
Well, and that's why I've been struggling a fair bit with it. I will say is that I think that at least in my mind, I feel like the rules for edit in particular should be consistent regardless of how the user is editing. That if they learn that, oh wait, I can circumvent the requiredness just by clicking on it here versus here, then the admin's effort to actually ensure that data consistency can very easily be circumvented.
Talking layers, I want to add required.
You want to, yeah. So that's the interesting piece. So
if I understand what you're saying, I mean there is sort of fundamental data integrity,
which is
issues that we want to enforce at the lowest level.
Well, that should be schema level requiredness, which we have.
Schema level, and then there are things that are contextual, based on app context, for example, or quick action in a different context. And the combination of those two is how we're suggesting is being ultimately what you'd like to see. So you're like a client-side validation rule, but only in the context of a certain Lightning app or certain quick app.
That's interesting. Okay.
Read only.
Read only. So, thoughts on read only are a little different. One of the other things that we are talking about doing as part of this new effort is to open up what can be put onto one of these layouts. So relaxing the requirement to say that it shouldn't just have to be fields from the object that you're currently looking at. What if we could actually allow for an expression syntax that would allow you to span to related fields? Or perhaps even derived values where it's a calculated value that doesn't actually live in the schema, but only lives in the context of that. Well, obviously if it is a derived value, that's inherently read-only. So that same capability could very easily be used to be able to have a way of saying that read-only is done essentially by reference to the field as opposed to by directly placing the field control onto it. Let's leave aside how we'd actually implement the tooling of it, but conceptually that's one of the ideas. What do you think? How important would providing the ability to edit those related fields be? So if I'm on an opportunity, how important is it to be able to edit a field from the account record?
It could be dangerous.
You think it could be dangerous?
We can do it through other components. So we've got a way to do that already.
Yeah. Related
record.
Mm-hmm. But would you like to be able to just actually edit the account name right there? No?
Because people wouldn't realize it's changing it anywhere.
Interesting. Okay.
Massively reduce your click count.
I'm sorry?
It would reduce massively your.
It would massively reduce your click count. But the other side of the room is saying these knives feel too sharp. So that's why I'm asking.
I don't know, it seems you took on the big challenge and missed the simple challenges. Like, change state. So you've got mark stage is done. So every time you go on that sales path, you then got to have to click another button to confirm the button you just clicked. Just get rid of that button. There's so many other features I think you could have removed. I don't think you've missed. Just a personal thing. You seem to have jumped way ahead of this very simple features that we could have put in.
Okay. Yes.
A little bit of the user experience because they're used to the concept of an object. You go to that object and make the change. If you start making it possible to cut across, I think that complicates things.
Yeah, context and granularity.
Because you are doing it, but it's on the special pages you build it. It would be great if you can do it from the builder, this kind of page. You know, editing, account, content, everything in one page, but this should be not as a default capability on the given object.
Okay.
I agree that most of the users would not understand what they're doing.
But I think the redundant is fantastic. I mean, I think to have dribbles code just.
Oh, for sure. I mean, to not have to go and create a formula field that does nothing but do a lookup to a related field just so you can place it on the page there. Yeah, that would be pretty nice, wouldn't it?
With no limits.
There will be.
I can't make 100% promises about. It was actually the first product that we released based on Lightning. You can't actually place a Lightning component onto a record detail page. So what if a future could look like this, where I come into my Salesforce mobile application, I click on everybody's favorite hamburger over on the top left, and I see some navigation items there, but also notice I see a waffle. And I could click that and actually bring up an app launcher inside of my mobile application. So notice that now I'm seeing a subset of the apps here in my desktop app are showing up here in the mobile application.
When are we getting
Please.
This will all be released at a Dreamforce.
I have 1,600 components in one org. That list is unmanageable.
I can only imagine.
If you need someone to pre-test it with, we'll do it.
We are taking names. So, so here I am. I'm looking at a subset of my application. So clearly what I've done is I've said that my Lightning app, you may have noticed, for example, that when we released the Lightning version of custom application, if anyone ever looked at it via the metadata API, that a Lightning app was enabled for form factor equals large. And you might have thought that was a little strange. They didn't say it's Lightning enabled, they said it's form factor equals large. Well, that's because we had intentions of form factor equals small. And so basically, the additional metadata was planned from the beginning here, saying that we want our custom applications to be able to work for either, and to be able to put you in control over which applications will show up in which experience. Because you'll have some applications that really only make sense on the desktop. For example, I don't think we're going to allow you to go and run a console application on your phone. It probably just doesn't make sense. But there's other, and then inversely, there may be other applications, not that we've provided, but that you may build yourself that you really only intend for your mobile users. So you don't want them showing up when the user is here inside Lightning Experience. You only want that app when they're on the phone. But there's a lot of others where you potentially want both. So here we are. We'll pick our sales application here on the desktop. I keep always wanting to go over here and click on the projection of my iPhone on the screen there. It doesn't work. So I actually have to click on the sales application here on my phone. And assuming that everything's behaving, there we go. So here we are. We've got our application now here on the left, on the phone, and on the right. So I'm going to go over to my accounts object here now. We'll go and we will pick an account here on the left, on the phone, get that same account. And now let's start to do some other. So imagine now if I could take this account page, and we can go here and open that up inside of App Builder. There's the account page, opened and edited obviously as it looked on the desktop. But again, a special version of App Builder. Now, this is a different special version of App Builder. You'll notice that I don't have my, my handy-dandy fields palette over here at the moment. But what I do have instead is I've got a drop-down that allows me to switch my record pages there from desktop to phone. And what it's doing for me now is it's actually going to take the exact same Lightning page and reflow it for my phone. So the same metadata being reimagined in a way that will work on the phone instead of the desktop. Now, this is not the final UX of it. There's actually a lot of work that is actively going on for it. In particular, we have some really exciting things that are going to happen around these tabs, and really trying to optimize those for the mobile experience there to make much better use of the mobile screen real estate and to make it just a more interactive experience there. But now you can imagine that, well, the thing that I might want to do is I might want to go and bring a custom component onto the page. So I've built this handy-dandy component here that allows me to go and visit my accounts. Because that's one of the things I might want to do when I'm looking at an account while I'm on my phone, is I might actually want to go and physically visit them. So I want an easy way to get an Uber, or in the US we also have Lyft as a competitor to Uber. I guess here it's, what is it? There's a couple of My Taxi apps and things like that, right? So I need to internationalize my example component here. I apologize. But we all, of course, have Google Maps. And now, requesting an Uber or a My Taxi or a Google Map doesn't make a whole lot of sense when I'm sitting in front of my desktop machine. So this is a component that I really only want to have when I'm on my phone. So in that case, we can go ahead here and say, you know what, that should be advanced. There we go. We'll say that one should vary by the client. Form factor. My guys promised me that they're going to change this value, so instead of it saying small, it'll actually say phone. We want the values to be consistent there. And now what we've done is we've now gone and made the appearance of that component conditional, so that when I'm on the desktop, it shouldn't be there. In fact, we'll come back over to here to the desktop, and we'll reload. And as you'd expect, it's not there. But if I come over here to my phone, jump back, let's see if that'll reload it. I'm going to have to quit the app, hang on. There we go, come back into accounts. There we go, and there it's loaded. And so we can now see exactly what you would expect. We have a custom component being placed, oh, wow. Well, that's no fun. Not sure what happened there. The connection from the phone to the computer seems to have gone in the fritz a little bit. But the idea is obviously, you all saw it there for a brief second, right? So the custom component was rendering on the record page in the Salesforce mobile application. Lex on mobile. I think again, this is something that if things go according to plan, we should be piloting this with a small group of customers, again around the Dreamforce timeframe, and then looking into next year about being able to make it more broadly available. So those were the two sort of big, juicy things I wanted to share with you guys tonight. Are you guys excited? Yeah. Does that start to transform the overall Lightning experience? Okay. Great. Now it's your job to ask questions about not just what I've shown, but other things that you're curious about on Lightning. Like I said, we've got a great pool of product and engineering talent here tonight, so we'd be happy to help make the most of your Lightning experience. Yes?
When can we have filters on our related lists?
When can we have filters on a related list? Jeff's right there in the back, so.
Very soon. We are currently developing that now. There'll be a small scale with the vectories, and then we're going to go much wider. You follow it. So, in progress.
What does small scale mean?
We're going to be targeting campaign members and campaign influence.
But then,
So it does the RDOT initially, and then it'll basically expand out to all objects essentially come spring.
And that's end user filtering, right, Jeff?
Correct. This is end user filtering. We didn't think that we wanted to make the admin do all the filtering. So the end users can do filtering very, very quickly, almost like an Amazon style. Tick, 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 apply. So it's very fast, very intuitive, and the end users can get to the data that they want without the admin having to do it all for them.
Yeah. And then a bit longer term, one of the things that we definitely actually allow for admin-defined related lists in a way where you can actually have multiple related lists against the same relationship with filters. So, just one second. So you can imagine, for example, that on an account, I could have a list of my open cases and my closed cases as two separate related lists that I could place in different parts of the page or conditionally show.
And to be clear, the filtering, or what we're calling transient filters that the user applies, will basically be at the drilling level. So when you click on it, you all there, for example, it's the drilling page where you apply the filter.
Okay, so you can't have that on the, like, so you couldn't, next to the sales orders, you couldn't have a filter there.
Not on new one, but happy to talk about use case.
And the admin or fields can be filtered on.
Basically, we are going to allow filtering based on the fields that are part of the related list. So it's set up
so anything
up to
that's
10.
there. Okay.
So it's any field that's there.
Okay, right. So similarly, I'm going to. What about on search filters? Because at the moment they're only accounts and files in Lightning, aren't they?
I know that they're working on expanding that. I don't have details. I don't know what that do.
The question was, what about search filters? Because they're only on accounts and files.
On Lightning, whereas
in Lightning. Do you remember, Mike?
The plan was to put that on everything, but let me check.
We're checking. The beauty of having a developer user group in London at 8 o'clock at night is that it's only noon in San Francisco. So we have the ability to tap into the entire product and engineering org. But we won't be disturbing them too much. Okay. Absolutely.
The fields, the builder, the special version, will respect field level security?
What I was showing with the form editing? Yeah. Of course, field level security is at the lowest level and should always be respected everywhere. You know, much the same way that like schema level requiredness should be respected everywhere. So, absolutely. I think I would probably lose my job if not.
How are you getting on with rendering various setup pages where you've got an iframed classic interface inside a Lightning page? Yes. There's a lot of that still in there.
Yes, there is.
I can talk to that. So the reality is that if you look at the number of nodes in the setup tree in Classic, right? There's hundreds upon hundreds. You know, from a prioritization standpoint, I mean, literally, if you have something that functionally is not changing much, or it's a feature, you know, the reality is that internally it's just difficult to prioritize and just straight up conversion from the way that we did it in Classic to Lightning. There's really nothing functional. It would just be a lot of work for very little benefit. I think what you're probably asking about more is there's a visual discontinuity. You know it's an iframe, but you can set the page and everything else and see that. But visually it's very different. The fonts are different, the layout is different. For that, specifically, you've got a different approach. And if you think about visual force as another sort of classic era technology, and what you have now with visual force is the ability to apply Lightning style sheets to a VF page. And it does its best. It's not 100% perfect, but for the most part, it gets the look and feel of visual force that looked like Classic before, looking a little bit more like Lightning. The plan is basically to do likewise for a number of setup pages. We're not going to do them all, because again, it's the investment to validate, to test, to certify, to fix all of the corner cases, a little bit excessive. But our goal is to take a similar approach to what we did with visual force, like the style sheets, slap some additional CSS into those iframe pages, make them look more like that.
You guys all know about Lightning Style Sheets for Visualforce, right? And that's GAing in summer. Lightning Style Sheets equals true, and if you're using the standard VF components, it will look like Lightning.
And it helps that a lot of our setup pages internally are actually written on Visualforce.
Yeah.
So that's why we're using that.
You've mentioned you were planning on having conditional visibility fields.
Yes.
Forward-looking statement, I know. But while we're there, are there any plans on...
Buttons? No, okay.
Conditional highlighting, conditional formatting of fields?
It's certainly something I would love to see. You know, in all honesty, I'm amazed that there's things that still amaze me that we don't have on our platform. I've been at Salesforce about just over 4 years now, and certainly, you know, been using it quite a bit longer than that as well. And it seems like something we should obviously have at some point. As far as when, I don't yet know.
When it comes to lists and related lists, it just makes a ton of sense. So that is on the near to medium term of that.
Yeah, but I mean everywhere. I mean, ultimately, it makes sense to be able to say that, you know, that a field turns red or turns green based on, you know, based on data that you're entering and things like that. It's pretty standard app platform type capability, and so definitely something that I think we want to see happen. But one of the other ones that we are also working on that we hear a lot about is conditional visibility of actions and buttons. And saying that, you know, again, there are cases where people are creating separate page layouts just because they need to hide a button. To me, that's very painful. We shouldn't force that kind of pain on people. Let me grab one from the back, and yes.
Is the most coming in the way of mobile offline and flexibility around that in terms of how we can control what's cached or?
Is there more coming about, basically the question was, is there more coming around mobile and offline and control over what can be cached? Well, you know, it's really interesting because basically as part of the project for bringing Lightning to mobile, we are completely breaking offline, which means that it's the opportunity therefore to completely might be a dangerous statement, but to massively re-examine how we've implemented offline. And so that project has just kicked off. I know that that's definitely some of the things that they're thinking about is how they can do smarter priming to be able to also do better and more extensive caching. It requires really a complete rethink to the approach. There are limitations imposed on us by the actual mobile platforms. On iOS in particular, I know that there are limitations about basically what a web view is allowed to do and is not allowed to do, and that is the channel by which the current offline implementation works. So they have to go back to the drawing board a bit to think about what the actual plumbing looks like, as well as then even about what could be flexible from a configuration perspective.
Lightning error messages, you know, you get the modal pop up with some code you don't understand and someone or something's falling from the ceiling. I mean, are they actually, do you report on them? Do you view them? Do you check to see what's going on?
So yes, short answer. We look at an aggregate level across the board at error rates. So the number of percentage, the key metric that internally we're looking at is the percentage of users within a given week that saw one of those error messages. And we're actively managing that number down. It's gone down. I don't know how much I could say here, but it's gone down significantly, and we're fairly close to where we want to be from a target percentage. This is something that has executive level visibility. There are weekly reports that go out to all teams that have bugs that basically are highly impacting, and we're actively shaming/hounding those people to get this fixed.
And I think there's also, on the framework side, I believe there's also some work on trying to make the feedback, the error messages, more intelligible to the developer, you know, to really provide a little bit more guidance as to what was the cause of the error. Am I
Well,
JF?
So I've been training a client the last 3 weeks, and I'm getting consistent errors on inline editing. Standard edit code completely fine, and this is a client.
That sounds like something we'd love for you to open a case.
Validation tool.
So let's chat after. I'll give you my email. Just send me a screenshot or a standard site email.
Yeah, because that shouldn't be, that doesn't sound normal. We should definitely follow up and try and triage that.
If you get an internal server error on your custom lightning components, then look at my talk at January that again, but it tells you why. But it's actually improved. They're going to get a server error.
Okay, who's next?
So you've shown us a tool that really allows us to shape a page layout, a lightning page layout. So what happens to traditional page layout? It's some kind of links to what you were saying. The page layout editor.
Yep.
You've got two places where you're changing what a page looks like. Is there any idea to bring?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You saw me showing you there of editing essentially the next generation of layouts in App Builder.
So does page layout go away?
My 4-year-old will probably be in college or graduated from college before the last of the page layouts is eradicated. But yes, the short answer is that basically it will be a very gradual, phase out, in the sense that they will continue to be supported as long as anybody's using them. There are, way too many. I don't even know the current number off the top of my head. It's been a while since I've looked. But put it this way, there are enough page layouts out there, and enough page layouts that are part of managed packages out there, that they're not going away anytime soon. But don't expect any enhancements to the page layouts, to the page layout capabilities, to the page layout editor. Basically, what we're going to do is that we're investing in the new capabilities, because we've had a pretty massive backlog. The overall scope of this project, in terms of the things that we want to address with it over the next couple of years, will allow us to retire somewhere in the neighborhood of about 150,000 points on ID Exchange right now. So if it gives you a sense, these are things that the community has been asking for a very long time. The top open idea right now is the ability to have dependent page layouts, or to be able to dynamically control the appearance of fields. We could not do that with classic page layouts in Classic. It just was not possible because of the technology of Classic. Lightning fundamentally changes it because there's an application running in your browser. And so the first thing that we brought out with this was the dynamic lightning page. And the way that dynamic lightning page is working, that conditional appearance of a component, we're actually bringing the formula engine from the server and actually running a subset of the formula engine in your browser there. So we're actually compiling formulas into JavaScript code and ensuring that they run consistently on the client as they do on the server. And the beauty of that is it means that, for example, when you have a dynamic lightning page and you have a component that's conditional based on a field value, the second that field value changes, that component will instantly appear or disappear without us going back to the server. It's happening entirely in the browser. And so that was necessary, because you can imagine that if we had to phone home every time you edited a field to decide whether or not we should be showing components, or let alone fields, the thing would become a dog. And we don't want to do that. So the first step was bringing the power of the formula engine to the client, and then it's about bringing more flexibility to page layouts, and then it's marrying those together.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that question there.
Thank you, Eric and team.
Thank you, David, for a very quick and insightful talk as well.